Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to our premiere coverage of For All Mankind Season 4. I am your host, Mario Busto, alongside
the other host, Zachary Newton. Welcome back.
We're back. It's our first deep dive into For All Mankind, period. We did do a Seasons 1 through 3 recap. If you missed that, I recommend you check it out. We're going to do some housekeeping to correct something that we did get incorrect on that, according to some of our emailers. But for some reason, I guess the betrayal of Ed Baldwin struck us so hard as viewers that we just imagined that something occurred. Zach, what'd you think of episode 1 that kicked off season 4 here of For All Mankind?
I liked it a lot. I feel like they brought us up to speed in a pretty good way. Like the whole story, telling at the very beginning of the episode, is like walking through a timeline. It was interesting. I see that they've kind of obviously made some clear changes on who's won some things like elections and how that's all gone down. So it was interesting to see. But no, I like this episode a lot. For the first episode of season 4, we got introduced to a new character who lies his way to Mars. So that'll be interesting to see how that goes down. And he's on the ship with Danny or Danielle, whatever you want to call it.
I don't think that lie that he went to FSU. It might have ingratiated him enough to get that guy to mention the Mars trip, but I don't know. I think that there was not many takers for that trip in the first place. So
probably not.
Yeah.
But I think the point that I was kind of making was like, I think we're being led to believe here that he's a fuck up, right? Like, like he shouldn't be there. He wasn't qualified to go. And that that's my feeling with him at the very least from this episode. That's the way that I felt about him. Mm-hmm. It looked like he was cheating off of other people's homework. He kind of looks like a failure in some ways. I mean, I get life's hard and all of that, but he just seems to have a lot of like personal issues, and I don't know. I think he's probably out of his depth, and I really think that that's what this episode's trying to make us believe, especially with the way that we kind of pair that with, seeing him on the same ship that Danielle's on.
See, I didn't take it that way because you have to remember that this is an alternate U.S. history. So at this point in 2001, fossil fuels have been done away with. So the entire industry is dead. So he's coming from the oil industry, that's all he worked on. And so that industry is completely dead and there's no place that's hiring him. And so now he's looking for a new way to fit into this world that's moved on to nuclear power and to battery powered, electric powered vehicles. That's one of the things that they kind of subtly talk about in the premiere of season 4. But I was actually put on to do something before watching episode 1 by emailer Jared, who thanks for writing in. He pretty much asked, hey, did you guys see that Apple put out a years 1996 through 2001 timeline? So there's they did little mini episodes of what happened, because in this episode of season 4 to kick it off, we fast forward actually 8 years, and they're just filling us in on years 96 through 2001. So they take us through a few things, and it's kind of a fun little bit of retelling of history, which we'll go through right now. I kind of wrote down the high points of everything that they changed in history. And funny enough, if you watch those videos, they not only give you the fake history, but then at the end of it, they put real history and they show you what actually happened. Because I think people are I honestly, my first thought when I saw this, and whatever, judge me, I think it's because they're scared that at a certain point, somebody's going to watch this show 20 years from now. And if they didn't put that real history part, people would be too inundated with information or dumb to know the difference that, hey, Al Gore didn't win the presidency. Hey, Ellen Wilson doesn't exist. She was never the president in the 90s. Shit like that they would have to correct. And so I feel like they're just doing a moral duty to let everyone know that this is fake history. However, I was laughing my head off because one of our YouTube commenters, what's his name? Space Case? What is the
Space Case?
Space Case.
Is
I only know him by the $ PFP. So I always that's the only visual I have. And he's like, the show's so progressive. And it's hilarious because the show is kind of humorous in the sense that they're casting out a future of what the world would have looked like if the space race never stopped. And it's kind of interesting to actually pitch that scenario of how different would the world be. In this very optimistic view of the writer's room, they are saying, now, who knows what conflict's going to ensue in season 4, right?
Yeah.
Essentially, the Cold War is over. The Cold War doesn't exist anymore when we get into season 4 because there's a Mars 7 alliance where North America is working with, ironically enough, Russia and North Korea. So we're working with two of our, I feel as of late, we've turned, North Korea has been an enemy for a while, or at least an outsourced kind of just like, we don't talk about them part of
we're not friends. We're not
friends. Like, we're not like, that's it's not, it's not Canada. It's not the UK, it's not Israel. It's not like key allies to the US. So in this alternate retelling, we're allies with Russia, North Korea. I think Japan's in there. And there was another couple of countries. And then you got Mexico teamed up with some of the communist countries. And then China and Canada are independent, which is hilarious. So it's this alliance that has formed that's ended the Cold War in many ways between the US and Russia. In fact, Russia has had an economic boom. They're calling Moscow the Paris of the East, according to the economic boom happening in this For All Mankind reality, right? You also have a few other things that have occurred. Ellen Wilson wins re-election after she comes out of the closet. George H.W. Bush is her VP. I don't believe the Gulf Wars ever happened. Okay. Gore beats Bush. Okay, I'm Cuban. All right. So I grew up in South Florida when this particular storyline occurred, the Elian Gonzalez story, where this young Cuban boy came on a raft over here from Cuba. His mother, pretty much his whole family that he came with, died on this raft that came over here. It was a huge thing. It was during the Clinton administration. I was super young. I barely remember it. All I remember is the FBI or the military busting the door down on his house and kidnapping Elian Gonzalez in the middle of the night because there was a custody battle for Elian between his father, who was back in Cuba, and his mom's side of the family, which was down here in South Florida. Elian now, this day, is a propaganda artist for the socialist movement in Cuba. Okay, they have used him as a poster boy face for everything's good over here, even though Cuba's a shithole in terms of go look at. You want to see what Cuba is right now? Okay, go look up this YouTuber named Kurt Kaz who goes and visits Cuba, and and he says everything is difficult here in Cuba. None of the buses are running. There's no gas. He's taking horses across the country to get to places because of the corruption and the government that took all of the resources from the people, pretty much. Anyways, so in this alternate reality, Gore beats Bush because they're essentially making Ellen Wilson Clinton in a way, right? So they're making her kind of an offset of that because she handled the Elian Gonzalez situation in the same way that Clinton did, which was sending Elian back to Cuba, right? And in this reality, Al Gore makes him a U.S. citizen, which is funny. And then the reverse happens because if you're old enough to remember, Al Gore loses on a court decision to George Bush by 500 and something votes in Florida. Okay, so they're saying that it all swung because my people, the Cubans, voted for Gore because of his the way he handled the Elian Gonzalez situation. I'm talking a lot here, but it's a lot to catch up on. This episode was very dense in trying to understand all this history.
It is a lot to catch up on. You are much more of the history buff when it comes to these matters than I am. So I'm taking the moment to kind of sit back and learn, or relearn some of these things as well.
Let's go through a couple of other high points here. I don't believe 9/11 occurred in this reality that we're talking about, right?
It doesn't seem that way.
I don't believe the Oklahoma City bombing occurred. I think the way that they're trying to stay with history in a way, but they're flipping the characters of who was involved in what side of history. So in the Oklahoma City bombing that killed almost about the same number of people who died in the NASA bombing in the show that kills Karen Baldwin and several others. It sends Jimmy Stevens to jail for 12 years, according to the show. And all the other ringleaders get life in prison, pretty much. They are modeling that after the Oklahoma City bombing that occurred. That was equally devastating in its own way. I don't believe 9/11 has occurred. I don't know if it will occur later in this season for some reason. But then again, if the Gulf Wars didn't happen, maybe that doesn't occur at all. I don't know. It seems like the butterfly effect of the space race affected everything. So much so that Hillary Clinton divorces Bill Clinton in this reality. So I guess Hillary, all right, Hillary has a partnership with Apple TV. She has a show where it's like her and Chelsea like going across the US and doing stuff. I haven't watched it, okay? Also, George Bush lately. I'm old enough to remember when the Democratic media, like the liberal media, hated George Bush. Okay, yeah. So they make George H.W. Bush more favorable, I guess, in the portrayal on this show. And then Hillary Clinton divorces Bill Clinton. Okay, so in this reality, she does not stay with Bill with all of his numerous infidelities. Okay, so that splits off. Who knows? Maybe Hillary becomes president in this show at some point. It's the closest she'll get to it. So I'm sure she'll be a big fan of this. I wonder if they asked her opinion, like, "Hey, Hillary, you're gonna divorce Bill in this season." Like that. Don't you?
Are you okay with that?
Well, they do a few things, right? Like, I wonder if they asked permission because she didn't divorce him. She obviously settled, or was okay with moving on from the issue, right? And then you have when Ellen comes out of the closet, they literally throw shade at Lindsey Graham and a couple of other Republicans. They're like, the Republican side was arguably against Ellen and her decision to come out. And then it just shows Lindsey Graham like at the thing, obviously footage that has nothing to do with this. So I wonder if they have to say like, hey, Lindsey, we're going to put you against Ellen here. And how do you feel about that? Or if they can just use it for free because it's government footage. I wonder if they just are able. I would love to talk to the editor of the show or the director of the show and ask if like, how much permission do you have to ask when you change history? Like, do you have to get this cleared by anybody? Because, history completely is altered here. I wonder if they have to, do anything there. I will tell you one person who does not escape the butterfly effect of positivity that occurs on this show and history. Harvey Weinstein, still a serial rapist. He does not escape. He does not escape. Oh, so yeah, no matter what reality we enter into here of the space race continuing, Harvey Weinstein is still going to be Harvey Weinstein. I will say John Lennon survives. He performs at the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So the Beatles, I guess, never split up, which I'm cool with that. I'm definitely cool with that version of reality.
Mm-hmm.
And fossil fuels are done with. We mentioned that briefly with Miles earlier in the episode. Asteroid mining is now the new frontier and possibly like the new mecca of like pretty much industries. Like this is going to be the new emerging industry that occurs.
Yeah.
I already mentioned Jimmy and the terrorists are in prison. And as I predicted, Kelly's baby is literally the most famous baby on the planet and is being publicized on People's Magazine. So I think that about sums up everything that I noticed. If I missed anything in this 8-year time jump, let me know. Zach, did you catch anything that I missed, or do you want to comment on anything that I mentioned there?
No, I don't think you missed anything. At least I didn't catch something that I feel that you missed. But no, I agree. It would be very interesting to know what you do have to do when you are rewriting history. Because, man, I'll admit, it can be kind of confusing. When I first started watching this show, like back in the day, Season 1, Episode 1, I was sitting there for a minute and I'm like, wait a minute, did this actually happen? It took me a minute to realize. I'm like, wait, no, this isn't how this went down. Like once I saw the Russians landing on the moon first, I'm like, all right, this is an alternate storytelling of history. But for a moment it had me. I'm like, I was questioning what I remembered about history, and I'm like, oh, this is interesting. So I'd love to know as well.
It is fascinating. I feel like you could roll your eyes at some of the things that occur, but it's more entertaining to me than anything. The John Lennon one kind of crushed me a little more than anything else. I'm a mega Beatles fan. And when I saw him like with the fake image at the Super Bowl, I was like, damn, you imagine if John Lennon performed at the Super Bowl and Paul McCartney and Ringo and George were there? Like that would be insane.
It would be awesome.
So yeah, I'm not ever going to like concede and say like, oh man, I wish Americans weren't first on the moon. Like, why couldn't we have the reality where John Lennon didn't get shot? I mean, like why did the Russians get that?
It's because we made it to the moon, man. That's why.
Is it America bad? Is it like America bad? So, hey, since America made it to the moon, John Lennon gets shot. The Cold War happens. We go to multiple wars. 9/11 happens. Like it's all because America landed on the moon first.
Yeah, no, I have no idea. It is a darn shame though that's not
Is
the
that
reality we live in.
Is that what the show is saying?
No, I don't think so. I think
You
we're
don't think
reading
so?
way into it. I just think you gotta pick memorable moments and flip it on its head. Like I think that's just what it comes down to.
They should just have fun with it at this point and just change ridiculous things, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know what, but they should just change random stuff.
Aren't they? Aren't they already?
I'm talking about like more pop culture things, like
Okay.
you know, like James Cameron doesn't direct Titanic, like someone else does, you know, like Tim Burton directs Titanic or something like that, or you know, DiCaprio wins an Oscar like way earlier in his career. Like they just start changing things. LeBron passes Michael Jordan, he gets 7 rings instead of 4. You know, like they just start changing random things in history. You know,
That'd be funny. That'd be funny.
Shaquille O'Neal never goes to the Lakers. I don't know, just random. I'm kind of just isolating on sports and acting here at this point, but yeah, why not?
Those are your specialties.
I do wonder who's going to be president after Al Gore, though. I truly do, because George Bush is not president. So is Al Gore going to get 2 terms, or you know, they're going to send him to Mars like Futurama? Isn't that like a shtick in Futurama that Al Gore's like a floating head and they just kind of take him everywhere?
I never watched Futurama.
Yeah, me neither. But I just I've watched like little like snippets when I was younger, when it would just pop up on Adult Swim or Comedy Central. I forget which channel.
You weren't
had it.
supposed to be watching it, you mean?
Yeah, exactly. But it was never my cup of tea. I was always a Family Guy fan.
Family Guy's where it's at.
Yeah. All right. Let's get into the episode. That was literally just the intro of that happens in those little mini-sodes. So thank you, Jared, for that. I will go over your emails later in the deep dive recap, and we'll also get into some others. And I'm also interested to know the audience's take on this alternate retelling of global history and what you guys think of it as well. So
yeah. You know, there was something about the startup sequence when I was watching this episode that just, it made me think of Foundation.
Like
I don't know why. It felt very similar. Like,
because how much money they probably spent on building this. It looks incredible.
Probably something along those lines. I don't know. I was just like, for a split moment, I'm like, wouldn't it be funny if like, you know, this version of like Earth and everything and human history evolved into what is the distant past from Foundation that they talk about. You know,
we've had that fun conversation of whether every single Apple TV show is somehow connected, and I wonder if they do. If that's like a super Easter egg in the background at Apple HQ, that everything is kind of connected in some weird way. I think that would be really funny if they tried doing something like that. I will say this, man. I really do think it would have been plausible if the entire planet was focused on pushing the boundaries of human exploration and possibilities. I truly do think that if the space race would have stayed as accelerated as this show is saying, like from the 60s all the way forward into the 2000s, we would be a lot further technologically than we are today in terms of space exploration and actual human advancement. So I don't really think that that's far-fetched. In fact, episode 1 has this new guy who's in charge, Eli, of NASA, right? And he's been brought in from Chrysler to pretty much clean up NASA by Al Gore, right? And it's the ever growing conundrum that we saw in our lifetimes and before our lifetimes, that the priority by a lot of administrations was to cut the NASA budget tremendously. And so we didn't see, I feel like there hasn't been a massive emphasis on space exploration until Elon Musk really came along, right? And I'm not an expert on this subject matter. I'd love to have an expert on the show to talk about this. My cousin is a rocket scientist, so maybe I could get him on.
Oh, that'd be cool.
And I really do think that, you know, a lot of these presidents have cut the budgets of NASA to a crazy degree. I think it was really just Trump who brought in the Space Force, and kind of with Musk and that, there was kind of a resurgence, and now it's becoming a little more, you know, commonplace again. Like we're striving to explore the the what is it, the galaxy? I'm such a
The universe? I don't know, something like that.
Yeah,
Our
yeah.
galaxy,
Our
our solar
galaxy.
system
Our
at the very least.
Yeah,
You know,
yes.
I do agree though, right? Like if we did have this global, competition of always trying to one up each other,
Competition does breed
hopefully
innovation.
healthy,
Yeah.
right? Like healthy competition, right? We don't want to start a bunch of wars
All
like
competition
that
breeds
happened
innovation.
on the
All
moon
competition.
in season 2. Yeah.
Mhm.
I do think we would be much farther along, right? Like, because that was the point I was getting to. Like, you're going to be forced to innovate. Like, that's the game that you're playing. You're playing the
100%.
innovation game. So
You're also connecting the world in a bigger way, because what unifies you more than like just being in space? I mean, we're all humans, right? So we all, at the end of the day, it's like let's say we're invaded by aliens. Immediately, nobody gives a damn what country you're from. Like, we're all fighting against the aliens. You know what I mean? It's like human versus alien. So when we're going into space and you see one country doing great, unless they're an evil country that's trying to put nukes in space and all that, which, by the way, mining on the moon does make me a little uneasy.
I know, man. If you screw up the moon,
like our whole gravitational pull,
we're kind of effed, right? Yeah, we're gonna have like tsunamis and everything. Like, we're just gonna become a water planet or something. I don't know.
I was thinking of that. We're gonna literally become Gale's planet from Foundation.
I agree though.
Synax.
Like mining on the moon makes me nervous as hell to think about.
Yeah.
I'm like, man, if somebody really does screw up the moon, like there's no coming back from that. Like, but I mean, who knows what it would take for that to happen? I mean, I guess I hope we'll never know. I'll put it that way.
I guess we'll never know. The show opens up and kind of sets the stage with a very old Ed Baldwin. Just it's kind of hard to see Ed here, so aged. But I'm glad he has a place still in space. It doesn't really feel like Earth has anything left for him besides Kelly and Alex, right?
That's about it. Yeah, but I don't think there really is anything on Earth for him. Everything's been taken away.
He's commanding a ship as part of the Mars 7 alliance, right? And it's a combination of Russia on this ship, the Americans, and collaboration with a private company called Helios, and they're all working towards putting the first man on an asteroid so that they can start mining the minerals that are inside of these asteroids, which is, I think there's a ridiculous amount of minerals in asteroids. I heard some crazy figure that there's an insane amount of gold in the asteroids that are just floating around, like more than we have on Earth.
But you got one that's it's coined Lucy's diamond or something, right?
Really? I don't know. I just heard something about that it's becoming more feasible to discuss mining on these asteroids and bringing these minerals to Earth.
Interesting.
I was interested I was kind of intrigued by the plan they had, which was just to put a bunch of cables around this thing and to tow it in space, right? Or they were kind of pushing it.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about all of that.
Yeah.
I don't know how like dense and heavy the asteroid really is. I mean, clearly it's freaking massive.
Yeah.
But I almost feel like maybe you would have done better trying to like tow it along behind you and like pull it, maybe. But I don't know. Maybe I'm just being naive here.
Yeah. We also catch up with Margo, who the kind of unique thing about the way this season opens up is that we're not really told how everybody got to where they are. If you can push forward to Margo on the screen here. And I'm going to assume that based on Margo's leaking of classified designs to the Soviet Union, that which by the way, the Eastern Bloc never fell. So the Soviet Union is still very much alive and well in this reality of For All Mankind, right? So she is, I'm assuming she has had to defect to Russia, and she did so on the basis that she would be deeply involved in their space program. But she's built this life for herself that is quite depressing to watch over and over again. It's like a depressing version of Groundhog Day with Bill Murray, where she wakes up every morning and gets these fresh baked goods. Everything is very gray. It seems that, it's just very gloomy in her life right now and the way she's operating.
Yes, it is very gloomy. I was wondering, is she just old now, like
she's
Ed
old,
is, or like
old.
Is she like wounded or something? I mean, she's got a limp and everything.
No, she's old, and she's doing a good job of acting older, right?
Yeah.
I,
This show does a good job at making everybody actually like legitimately look older too. Like I think the makeup and everything is pretty good.
I will say she looks more convincing than Ed does.
A little
Because
bit,
of the kind of the bald cap that they put on Joel Kinnaman. For his thing kind of looks a little bit like it looks clearly fake, but maybe it's because I saw a bunch of behind the scenes stuff. So there you get the sense as Margot's walking around in her morning routine that there's just spies everywhere. Because everyone's kind of looking at her at the side of their eye, and so you just never know. And funny enough, I watched this movie on Apple TV called Tetris, which tells the story of the making of the game Tetris. And as that character is in Russia, it feels like everybody's just watching him and everybody's reporting to someone else who's reporting to someone else.
Yep.
I don't know if that's how it is. I've never been to Russia. But some of you really do have to watch between this episode and the next. Make sure you watch 96 through 01 of it, because they show that Russia has had an economic boom. And the mock-ups and the designs they show, it looks gorgeous because they kind of show Russia during Christmas time. And it does look very nice. I will say that.
I'm gonna have to watch it, but to your point, no, I agree. This entire, every scene really that has her in Russia, right? Like it does feel like she's being watched. I mean, to the point where later on in the episode, she's just sitting there eating, and somebody's just there. You think they're minding their own business, and out of left field, they're just like, "So I know who you are."
Yeah,
it's a little creepy.
They seem to have a solid grip on her daily routine, and they're keeping tabs on her at all times, which is interesting considering she could be used as an asset. I'm assuming she's going to become very valuable very soon, based off of some of the conflicts that are emerging with the asteroid belt mining situation.
I would imagine so. If she wasn't going to become very important, I don't think we'd still be focused on her. Honestly, I think the show probably would have moved on.
Yeah. The other thing in this episode is that we're not only catching up with old characters that we love, we're also catching up with or being introduced to new characters. And so we get introduced to Miles, who is a dad / husband who's kind of down on his luck. He used to be an oil rigger in the fossil fuel industry. And because of the rapid advances due to the space race, the ongoing space race, he has found himself down on his luck, his marriage about to be dissolved. Feels like she's just leaving him simply because he's not making any money. That's what it feels like to me, because she seems very much still in love with the guy. And by the way, shout out, what's his name? The actor who plays Miles.
Toby Kebbell.
He's in a very memorable episode of Black Mirror called The History of You, or The Entire History of You. And Robert Downey Jr. actually bought the rights to that script. That script has been moving around Hollywood for a while now. And I believe it's a movie that they're going to put in production, which is a story of a guy who's he's jealously obsessed with certain things about his girlfriend's or fiance's life. And there's a constant record of your memory inside of your head all the time, or something like that.
Yeah, but it was a great episode of Black Mirror.
Yeah, but you know him from another show. What show is he prominent in?
So I know him as the character Sean Turner from Servant, which is another Apple TV Plus show.
I haven't watched Servant. I only know it as the Ron Weasley show.
Yeah, well, Ron Weasley is sure as heck not Ron Weasley in that show. But I
love Rupert
it was interesting.
Grint, by the way.
Huh?
I love Rupert Grint, by the way. I mean, I'll always have an attachment to the Harry Potter characters.
Of course. And if you've watched the Harry Potters and like the Harry Potter movies, like it's probably going to take you a few episodes to remove yourself from that. It's like you're going to have to hold off. And I mean, even towards the end, or just later in the show, literally, like that character, like I still found myself at times like it was a little difficult to get into because I had such this attachment to him and Harry Potter. So, but it was an interesting show. I mean, I liked it. It's 4 seasons.
I got to check it out.
I think we binged it, man. My wife and I binged through it near Halloween or something, like a little while ago.
If you've also got IMDb up, can you look up his youngest daughter's, the actress who plays the youngest daughter of Miles here? Because I just watched Five Nights at Freddy's and she looks identical to the little girl in that movie. Yeah, and you could just do that in the background while I talk about another aspect of of his character. He's going to interview for a job at Helios, which Dev Ayesa used to be the CEO at, and then Karen took over. Karen Baldwin, who, rest in peace, not really, is no longer with us due to the NASA bombing. And I say that because I don't know if you feel this way, Zach, but it really does feel like For All Mankind is back on the right track as a show. It really did feel like the turn that they took with Danny Stevens and Jimmy Stevens was a detour that they wanted to move away from as fast as possible. I don't think many people liked the storyline of Karen Baldwin choosing to sleep with her son's friend and her
best friend.
Yeah, her son's best friend, and then
her husband's best
friend's son. I don't think anybody liked that storyline. And then the random incel younger brother who's like a ringleader, who ends up being an integral part of a mass bombing. You know, I'm assuming that will be a piece. But I do think that this episode alluded to something terrible having happened to Danny Stevens, because our introduction to Danny's character, Danielle, is that she is pretty much supporting Danny's widow, or I'm assuming widow. I don't think Danny's alive. I have a feeling Danny killed himself.
Danny's alive. Yeah, I think Danny's dead. I'm 100% with you on that one.
I think he killed himself, though. I think it was something. Tragic to the degree that is haunting Danielle. Because there's every character in the show is haunted by something, right? You have Aleida. Later on, we see her still she's getting like a panic attack, thinking about the stress that's incurring from the failed asteroid mining operation has triggered her to have a panic attack of remembering the bombing that she survived in that building, right? And then Danielle kind of doesn't want to go back to space because she's thinking of Danny Stevens and seems to be blaming herself for Danny Stevens. But in the same way that this show has rewritten history, it feels like Karen Baldwin's decision to sleep with Danny Stevens irreparably harmed the future of the entire Stevens clan.
I would agree with that. I think Danny probably killed himself as well. Like I don't think there was just some random accident. Like I have a feeling that's what happened. Also, I do think maybe one thing that you did potentially miss in that whole, sequence at the beginning of the episode where we're brought up to speed is Danny's brother. If I remember correctly, he was like arrested. Yeah, Jimmy's arrested. He's gone to prison for all of that stuff.
No, I got that. I just called him an incel. But
well, there you go. Maybe I missed the name. I did want to also make a comment. So Lily Dale, the daughter of Miles, played by Piper Rubio, is in Five Nights at Freddy's.
Okay, she is the younger. She's the sister of Josh Hutcherson's character, Abby. Her name's Abby in the movie, right?
Yes, correct.
She does a good job there too. She's kind of she kind of fits into like a little bit of a creepy vibe in that movie. Here, she's like wholesome daughter. There, she's like creepy kid who speaks to like demonic animatrons. But I'm assuming they filmed this one I don't know. They probably filmed these around the same time, so she may be on her way to a big break.
It's got some dynamic acting skills.
I saw her. I was like, she looks familiar. I was like, look behind the cabinets, Miles, please. Something's wrong here. By the way, for someone down on his luck, oh no, his wife was living at her father's house, so that's why the house was so nice. I was like, yeah, he's living in a pretty nice house here in Baton Rouge. So I also liked at the end when the ship's heading off to Mars, it has when the Saints come marching in, which is great. I actually remember a fun trivia fact from my childhood. I used to play drums and xylophone in my middle school band. And
I did not know that.
One day I was just playing the xylophone and I started playing The Saints Go Marching In. And I was so excited because I thought I created my own song. I was like, this sounds great. And I was like telling my parents about it. They're like, this is The Saints Go Marching In. I was like, it exists? And so I hadn't created anything original.
That is such a wholesome and like sad story. At the
same time. Yeah. All right, moving onward here. Everything is going well on the asteroid mission until, unfortunately, the ropes start to give away tension, and it's a domino effect. Each one starts to kind of lose tension as we go. Ed, before this, has a conversation with his daughter, Kelly, and he is supposed to come home and relieve her of dealing with Alexei's very Russian mother, Olga, who has no hair on her tongue. She says what she's feeling, and she does not. She seems like such a pain in the ass to have in the house.
Man, she tells it like it is. That's all I can say.
She really does. She really does.
She seems like she'd be a great like a good help, right?
I feel
really
like she's gonna be
assistive with everything.
I feel like she's gonna be a character that you grow to love later in this season, but I don't expect her to be a major character. I just find her to be like so classically like honest, like that part of the world is. Like I feel like German people have that trait too, and Russians have that trait where they're just gonna say it how it is. They're not gonna have
sugarcoat it.
Yeah, they're not gonna sugarcoat it or anything like that. Which is it's funny to see her have to deal with that, and that I guess it's always the in-laws situation, right? Everyone has to deal with their in-laws. So you can plead the fifth, Zach. Continuing on with I said you could plead the fifth.
Yeah, I will. Okay.
All right. Continuing on here. I thought they were going to drill on this asteroid at first, but it turns out they were just rigging the cables on there.
Yeah, I don't think we've gotten to the mining part yet. They wanted to bring it around to the Mars orbit, right?
Yeah.
So
they wanted to bring it
I guess
Mars
it's there
orbit.
just so it's close, so they can mine close to the planet.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I'm looking forward to see how they go about mining these asteroids and what they're actually going to pull out of it. Because I have no idea what the heck is an asteroids, with the exception of maybe one that I heard is a massive freaking diamond floating in outer space. I just don't know what asteroids are made out of.
These have iridium and lithium. That's what they're looking to mine from this one, according to the show. I'm sure there's more stuff in there.
Probably. What did you think of? I commented on this a little bit earlier, but Miles going in for his interview. He's got his special shirt that his wife ironed for him.
I think it's he finally gets a break. In terms of first and foremost, he shows up to this interview. He probably thinks that he's been specially selected. Like there's he's gonna have a chance, and then the first thing he does is walk in and there's a million people in the room waiting for the same, like applying for the same job, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's a little bit disheartening, but he does what anybody would do in a situation when you're down and luck. You got to do what you got to do. Like a college education is not going to make you more prepared to go mine on Mars, especially, not the way he described his college experience. So
yeah,
this reminds me of what I did when I met with a film school director back in the day at UCF. I had read maybe 2 pages about Werner Herzog and his documentaries, and my meeting with the director wasn't going too well. And when he went to go step out to speak to his secretary, I was looking for anything in the room that I could cling on to kind of find common ground with this man. And I saw this guy, Werner Herzog, on his desk on this book, and I couldn't think of the name where I had seen it before. And I remembered my sister gave me a book from her film study course in college. And the only pages I read were about Werner Herzog. And he sat back down. The meeting was about to end. And I said, "So you're a fan of Werner Herzog, huh?" He was like, the meeting took a different turn. I was invited to the film festival. I was invited to do all sorts of things, But, you got to do what you got to do. And he chose to be an FSU alum. And now he's on his way on a 169 million mile trip to Mars.
Do you think he actually went to FSU?
Because no, absolutely not.
Good. All right. I wanted to make sure we were on the same page with that, because I did think that he was lying on his application. It sounded like he may have disagreed earlier with me.
I even think he went so far as writing the wrong letter down. I think he meant to put LSU, and I think he put FSU for some reason. Because he's from Louisiana.
I was confused by why he put FSU on there, because I believe the other lady's paper that I was looking at was LSU, right?
Well, I could see why he would have put FSU, simply to choose a college that's not in Louisiana. So maybe the guy who's here, since he's in Louisiana,
can't relate.
Exactly, can't relate. He didn't go to Louisiana, but little did he know, the guy, had a brother who went there, or he went there or something. So Anyways, he gets the opportunity to go to Mars. The reason the room is packed is because they want to go to the moon, which is a less intensive trip, right? A tour, so to
4
speak.
months.
Yeah, and the Mars trip is minimum 2 years. Which, by the way, I was a little concerned that we weren't going to get enough of our favorite characters because I wrote a little side note, as I typically do in my notes.
Mm-hmm.
Ed and Danielle have turned into the best characters in the show, by far. At least the ones that I personally look most forward to seeing on screen. But Miles, I took a liking to him pretty fast, of his storyline, what he's fighting for, his purpose. And I do think he probably emerges as one of the central or more pivotal characters in this season as we continue.
The Miles thing is interesting. I'm not really sure how I truly feel about him yet. I did really like him in Servant, but I'm not sure what he's going to turn into here. I feel like he's the Danny replacement. Like that's what I feel like.
You really
like,
do.
I mean, like the Danny that made the whole tower collapse. Like I just feel like there's something.
Oh, you
bad
think
that's gonna happen.
you think he's gonna mess it up further?
Yes. Yeah, I think he's the new Danny in that sense. I think he's going to be the guy that messes things up because you see Danielle at the end of this episode, on her way out to Mars. She's going to be taking over as the new commander, replacing Ed Baldwin. And then we see his torturous journey and realize that he's on the same thing. Like that's the feeling that it gives me in my gut and like the pit of my stomach. I'm like, man, this guy is going to mess things up. And Danielle, I mean, hopefully she doesn't die, but I mean, for all mankind, they're not too kind with people on screen.
People die, man.
Even in this episode, we got 2 people that died right in the first episode.
Yeah, we lose Gregory and
Peters.
Peters.
They don't pull any punches, man.
They don't. And I think other shows could take notes from that.
I agree. Yeah. Casp.
But yeah. I will say this. I disagree with you. I think that his character will find new purpose, right? And I think people root for the underdog. People root for the guy who's looking to turn his life around. And I think we're going to see the baton passing from Ed Baldwin and Danielle this season because they're already seasoned vets at this point. Like they got to pass the baton to the next generation, right? And you even see in this episode a bit, Ed has a little bit of the shakes,
yeah, he does. I mean, he's getting old, man. He's got a lot of stress, a lot of years on him.
Yeah.
He should not still be serving or doing anything at this point.
Well, the sense you get from Ed, and I think Joel Kinnaman does a great job of kind of showing this aspect of him, is that he's in space oftentimes because he's avoiding dealing with his stuff on Earth, And, when he comes back to Earth, he has to deal with the loss of his ex-wife. He has to deal with being a good father, like a single father, right? Mm-hmm. And a granddad now. So all these things, and he's not a pencil pusher. Like he does not like to be behind the desk. He likes to be in the action. So he's like a star athlete in a way, right? Yeah. He has to find his new purpose or his new thing, which by the way, I misunderstood this episode. I thought because of Gregory and Peter's decision to go out and try to stabilize this rig, that they were going to replace Ed, but it turns out that they're replacing the commander that they disobeyed on Happy Valley base on Mars. So he's getting replaced by Danielle, not Ed. Ed is staying.
Yeah,
there.
You're right. My bad. That's correct.
Ed at this point might be politically untouchable, simply because he's such an American hero. If you think about it, right? He saved the damn president, the current president or the former president. If you think about it, she was floating past space and he saved her. Okay.
Yeah.
He saved his daughter. And he's always outside the ship for some reason. Okay, He saved his daughter, his pregnant daughter. I mean, if you're gonna get rid of him, you can't. You literally cannot.
No, you can't.
Yeah.
He's also had his time pushing pencils at one point in this show, and
didn't go too long.
No, did not. Yes, that's why he's on Mars.
I will tell you, the one person I do miss is Molly Cobb. I do miss the crap out of Molly Cobb. I don't miss Karen at all.
I don't miss Karen. No.
I felt like she didn't add much to the show, and keeping her around was just kind of like giving, like a substitute teacher giving homework to the, busy work to the students.
Yeah.
Her becoming CEO of Helios, and
it kind of felt out of place.
It felt forced.
Weird.
It felt forced.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, sorry, Karen. I loved her in seasons 1 and 2, but season 3.
Yeah, season 3 was the end of our love for her
Was
and,
the
and
killer?
her life.
Yeah, was the killer.
Yeah.
All right.
Well,
moving onward. Tragedy strikes in space. Grigory, who's the first Russian to set foot on Mars, and
on an asteroid.
and on an asteroid, the first human to set foot on an asteroid. Okay.
Well, Danielle was the first one on Mars, right?
Yeah, but he was the first Russian, so he's famous in
That's true.
in Russia.
True.
Okay. Which, by the way, I think Russians would love this show. I wonder if they would let them watch this. I mean, is anything censored in Russia? Like, is this like?
I'm sure there is. I know one. I can ask.
Yeah, ask. I think I would be. I don't think things are censored, like shows and whatnot. Like North Korea is not getting this. I'll tell you that. But yeah. At least that's what I hear. I mean, there's literally missionaries who take USB drives with films into North Korea illegally. So I would be shocked if they have like Apple TV Plus in North Korea. But I'm sure they'd be delighted to know that they were the first on Mars somehow. That's probably the bit they take.
Just made it
they might take the footage from For All Mankind and just use it as a
like propaganda. We made it there, guys.
Yeah,
we did it. We did it.
Celebrate it.
I'll ask the guy I know, and I'll see if he watches it or can watch it.
Yeah,
again.
ask. Yeah, that would be super interested to know of this alternate history and what people would think about it from a Russian perspective and not our American perspective, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so the cables lose tension. Ed has to give up. He lets his friend die, unfortunately, but it is the choice he had to make, or that whole ship was going to crash into that asteroid 100%.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, there goes.
Yeah.
I kept on calling him Peters. I think it was Parker who got killed. Parker. And Grigory.
Parker sounds correct. I don't think he was that big of a character. He just had to be somebody on screen for a moment so that we could watch him die.
You know what sucks back on Earth is that Aleida on this day decided to bring her son to NASA. Yeah. So she brought her son on probably one of the most tragic days in NASA history, right? And while she's dealing with
I'd say NASA history, there's been a lot of other bad things.
It's one of them. Anytime like two people die on an operation that she's integrally a part of,
mm-hmm.
I'm assuming she feels the burden of it in some way.
I mean, she's got the panic attacks as this is all going on, so I would imagine so.
Yeah,
she's feeling the pressure from it. But hey, at least she'll get her wish. It'll be a day that her son will remember.
That's for sure.
How do you like Aleida? Where do you think we're gonna go with her and her storyline? I feel like her at-home life was a little odd. I mean, it's always been a little weird. Last season it was like I didn't think that whole relationship was even gonna last. They're still together here.
I actually thought I liked her home life in the previous season. I think the only reason it's rocky right now is because she's dealing with this with the panic attacks of dealing with the trauma from that, right? Which has got to be horrible to put yourself in the shoes. I mean, there's people out there who've survived tragic events, and I'm assuming it sticks with you for a long time, if not forever. Like Danielle says, right? The people you love and the people you lose, you never forget about them. You kind of just carry them with you everywhere. So I thought that was one of the best lines in the episode, right? Also, the line of Miles' wife who says, "Devils when they're up, angels when they're down," or something like that.
That's the line. That's the line.
We're back to a show that we can actually choose lines and say our favorite lines from an episode. So
yeah, that's true. Thankfully.
Yeah, but
sorry, Lupin's great, but not one for lines.
Yeah, I'll tell you this. I think I've always liked the latest character. I love her relationship with Margot. I like how it's kind of just a reflection of Margot's relationship with Von Braun, right? Warner Van Braun. And I'm interested to see what happens when inevitably Margot is brought in with her expertise, because she's a genius, to help the Russian space program, and whether her ass is going to get arrested by American authorities, or because the Cold War is over, maybe she's not going to be prosecuted or persecuted, or whatever word I'm looking for.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. You know, what do you think about this whole like unified nation-like base on Mars? Like, how do you think that's going to play out? Because when I was watching this episode, I had a thought, and I'm like, how foolish are we to think that everybody's gonna play nice when the people that exist on that planet are still, controlled by, the people moving the chess pieces down here, right? Like,
It's a very optimistic outlook on human nature. I'll tell you that.
yeah,
But look, you have this very successful space program, and you still got Al Gore cutting the budget of it by 20%, as they talk about in this series. So they're still dealing with the bureaucracy of politics, right? And one of the reasons Ellen became president was she campaigned on space, right? And she wanted to have a favorable lean towards supporting NASA. So, yeah, I mean, do I think it's optimistic? Do I think it could happen? Do I really think
I would say no.
Do I really think that Americans, like, for example, as an American, I was watching this episode and I was like, we're going to just send a Russian out there to be the first on the asteroid? Like, why can't we send our guy? They got the moon. You know what I mean?
That's true.
But that's my competitive side coming out saying, like, we're not going to let you just take the asteroid. Sorry. We got there first. But, to the other side of it, an attitude of collaboration and transparency, I think, is probably the most healthy. I would prefer to have multiple nations, like we have the ISS, right? The ISS is a combination of several countries. I prefer that than every country in its own silo, pun not intended. So yeah, I would prefer this. Do I think it's optimistic? Yeah. Do I think it's optimistic to think of it, especially with the Soviet Union still being around in the series? Yeah. I find it hard to believe that they would be this cooperative with Americans, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that's the thing that I'm having trouble believing is like how cooperative everybody is being. Like we have everybody like from a bunch of different nations on this one planet. They're all operating as if they're buddy, and I'm just thinking like like if they were maybe completely severed from every piece of communication that related to Earth, I could maybe see a way where like, hey, look, like now we're all here. We all have one mission, right? Stay alive, like survive. Like I could understand there potentially like being a lot of camaraderie at that point, but I feel like they're really all like pawns controlled by the same governments down here. There's a delay between when you get your commands. That's about it.
Our government doesn't even get along with itself. You think we're going to get along with other people's governments? Like it's just not going to happen like that. It hasn't happened historically. So, but I'm down for it with this show, and maybe, global governments can understand that and unify behind a common cause. But by the way, some of these buildings in the Soviet Union in this episode, specifically the one that Margot's heading towards when she shows up unannounced to try to meet the director, reminds me of the building from Severance that they clock in at every day. Kind of reminded me of that a bit.
The general like vibe of Russia as well kind of reminds me of Severance. You got this really slow paced like life outside that's just cold and dull and gray. Yeah, you're kind of right. Like even like just the general color palette.
Yeah, they choose the color.
And feels very similar.
The colorist intentionally is taking a more dull, like muted tone,
approach.
A completely muted tone at life. Everybody's dressed in these very dark shades, dark colors. There's not a lot of color except for this mural and the space thing. It's kind of on purpose too, right? Like this is the one element that's connecting this regime to the rest of the world, right? In a way that is bringing an economic boom to them, but pretty predictably is also creating a conflict between the classes of society, between the upper and the lower class and the middle class. So
yeah.
I
really wonder what Margot feels she has to bring other than everything that you can't.
Well, Margot feels like a contractor on the way out, right? Somebody who came in, who could have been really effective, but is dealing with really incompetent management, who's not giving her an opportunity to do so. And it feels like something really horrible is going to have to happen, even outside of the asteroid mining failed operation, to get her into the operator's chair.
Yeah. I I imagine I don't know if I don't think she's gonna like make her way up to be director or anything. I just think she's gonna be like maybe more of a glorified assistant to the director, just whispering in her ear or his ear. I think it's a her.
Imagine if she goes from
it's
Director Katish. She's a girl or a woman.
Yeah.
It would be kind of funny that if she becomes the head of the Russian space program. That'd be something.
Payback, people.
I don't think she'd be very popular in the States, but you know, what are you gonna do?
I don't think she's popular in the States now. That's why she's in Russia.
Her Russian, like the way her accent when she speaks Russian, sort of reminds me of You ever played The Sims?
No.
You ever heard a Sim speak?
No.
Well,
I know, and I've heard of the name of the game, but I've never.
Well, if you go on YouTube and type in Simoleon, like Sim speaking Simoleon, it kind of sounds a little bit like the way Margot speaks Russian. Ed breaks the news to Kelly that he is not returning home anytime soon, in a very Interstellar-esque vibe between this little FaceTime call they got.
Yeah.
They get better reception from space than we do currently on FaceTime.
Yeah, from my apartment.
Yeah. So
with a gigabyte down that I pay for. Okay.
Yeah. I bet you Olga throws down in the kitchen, by the way.
I would imagine so.
I bet you
this little kid looks pretty healthy.
Yeah, I bet you she cooks like a mean meal. Like, look at her. Like, she knows her way around, like, how to freaking make an epic feast meal.
The meal
look
has
at that.
Attitude.
She's making a stew. She's making like a beef stew back there.
Man, I love stew. Like,
yeah,
just
me
that
too.
nice, warm, like...
It's been like stew season, too. I've been very
heavy.
in a soup and stew mood, right?
Yeah.
Maybe some beef stew with like potatoes and carrots and onions in there. And oh, hell yeah.
I just had some chili tonight. My wife made some last night.
Very nice. Very nice.
I love a good chili. It's like extra, thick. It's full of flavor.
Yeah. Hey, what'd you think about NASA being named after Molly Cobb, the Molly Cobb Space Center? Huh?
It's a nice touch.
It has a very nice touch to it. Nice ring.
Remember
right?
her. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, Danny returns to NASA. And at this point, I put, I'm assuming 9/11 hasn't happened in this alternate reality is what I wrote in my notes.
I don't think it has. I really don't think it has. Nor do I think it will.
Yeah, I prefer that reality. They want her to be commander again on the Happy Valley base. And she kind of calls out Eli to his face saying, oh, I'd love to, but you haven't been very favorable to NASA. I mean, you cut the budget by 20%. And they're bringing her in, really pulling on her heartstrings because she grew a very tight-knit relationship with Grigori, who dies earlier in the episode. He's the Russian cosmonaut who gets his leg pinned to the truss outside of the spaceship. But eventually, Danny does take the position, I think, right, for a multitude of reasons. I think she wants to conquer her inner demons of whatever the hell happened with Danny Stevens. If he's even dead, I would assume that he is dead based on the tone and the way everybody acts about it whenever they hear his name in this episode.
Same. I think he's dead. Danielle's always been one to, I guess, challenge herself. Like she always seems like she wants to go and, get the next thing. So I wasn't surprised that she ended up on her way there by the end of this episode.
Didn't it feel like a desperation hire on the part of NASA here in terms of like, it's almost like they don't have any other candidates on the ready, and so they went for the easy hire in terms of here's one of our most beloved astronauts of all time. It's not going to be unpopular. It's almost like in the NBA equivalent of hiring Mike D'Antoni or Doc Rivers. Like they're esteemed, decorated coaches. Your fan base can't get too mad at you because they're good at what they do.
Yeah.
She's more decorated than both of them probably, but in terms of industry, but nonetheless, familiar name, good at what they do.
Yeah. It's an interesting choice.
Yeah.
I also found that the whole dynamic of, I guess who's in charge in Happy Valley.
I like this guy, by the
runs.
way. I like the head of NASA. It seems like NASA's a way healthier place without Margo stick up her butt. Reynolds there. Right? It just feels like healthier. Everyone likes it. Everyone's cracking a joke when he's saying his little speech. But I feel like something's going to take a dark turn with this guy, if I had to guess.
I kind of feel like it feels a little more, political in some ways in here, right? Like it's less like wearing your emotions on your sleeve. It's like, the big boss man's giving his speech. Ha, that's great.
Yeah.
That's funny. You know how that goes.
Even you, Dan. No one wants to be Dan.
what do you think about the leaders on Mars? That like they serve their terms, right? Like this guy's, it's only his midterm. So next you've got Russia that's going to go. And I don't know if it
You
comes
have
back to
to,
the US or
right?
somebody else. Yeah.
Whenever you involve
gotta
more
trade it around.
the moment you involve more partners, the more people you got to consult with. And so now it's, America can't just be like, this is our station, we're the in charge of here. No, now they got to be like, oh, the Russians got it for a year, and then who knows, the North Koreans got it for a year. And yeah, it seems to be just them three. I think Japan's involved some way. I think we got to look up the other 4 countries that are involved in the Mars 7 alliance. If you want to look it up, go for it, Zach.
Okay, we should just send Kelly's son up there and let him run it. He can serve for 2 terms.
I agree. Well, she's going to serve out the remaining of the term of the man who's getting replaced. So, all right. We continue on in the episode. Margot goes through her morning routine one more time in the Paris of the East, which doesn't feel very Paris-y in this episode because Margot's depressing morning routine really does take a toll on the viewer. She meets a woman feeding some finches on a bench who ends up being a Russian spy, leaving Margot a mysterious number on a card with no name. Who do you think this number is for or from, Zach? Because she's telling Margot she needs to be patient, which also simultaneously feels like a threat.
Yeah, it does. It does feel like a threat. I don't know. I was like wondering, like, is it just the director? Or like maybe there's somebody playing the middleman that's not letting them talk to each other.
Yeah.
I mean, watching the movie Tetris, again, assuming everything is like that, it feels like that. I mean, there's not a single phone call that you can make that's not being listened to or tapped or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I can't imagine.
Do you think
I wonder. Do you think
occur?
it could be? Do you think it could be her lover, the Russian lover?
I don't.
You don't think?
I think there might be a leadership coup going on, and there's different factions at play here, and perhaps they want to unseat the current director and put Margot in charge, in some way. I think that's possibly what's occurring here.
That would be interesting.
Yeah.
It'd be funny to have an American running Russia's space program from Earth.
Yeah.
While you have a Russian running the American space, like platform that was put there on Mars, right? Like it was initially a American ship that landed there because the Russians blew theirs up essentially with their nuclear meltdown.
Yeah. I absolutely loved this episode in terms of the way it's just leaving everything open for what could occur in the season. We lay the groundwork for what I am excited to see as pretty interesting character arcs. Margot's time in Russia. You got Ed, who's dealing with the aftermath of Grigori's death, and also Kelly back on Earth. You got Danielle taking a position of commander one more time. The mystery of Danny Stevens' fate of what occurred there. The mystery of Jimmy Stevens' current fate as he serves his prison time. We also haven't caught up with former President Ellen Wilson. And you have Aleida, who I'm assuming will also continue to play a role in this season in some major way. And then the new character of Miles, who is someone coming from an industry that has been made extinct by the new clean nuclear energy industry and is trying to find a way to save his family by going on this 2-year Mars tour. And that leaves us at the end of this episode with Miles on the ship with Danielle in charge, in command, and Ed smoking a cigarette in his cabin with what I presume are the sheiks, with a bunch of photos of Kelly and Alex all around his cabin.
Yeah. It's a very sad moment for Ed Baldwin, really. I mean, I think he seems pretty end of life to me.
It feels like this is definitely Ed's last season in For All Mankind, that he will die in space somehow.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, I mean, the day was going well for him before his friend died. I'm not going to say that this is his life all the time. I think it's just naturally a bad day at work for him. And I'm actually really glad that he did not find out that Karen slept with Danny Stevens, which, by the way, y'all, If you listen to our season 1 through 3 recap, the other host across from me in the beanie, incorrectly stated that Danny went to the confession booth with Ed.
All I remember so much. I mean, it's been a year since I've seen it. I remember him contemplating it so much at the very least, and that whole storyline just hurt too much. I guess I lied to myself in my own head, saying that he did say it. That's why Ed wanted to beat this shit out of him.
Yeah,
so
agreed.
Maybe I was wrong, I guess.
Let's get into some emails real quick. Then we'll do some categories, and then we'll sign off on this episode, our first episode of For All Mankind. A little housekeeping before we do that, though. We hope you're enjoying our deep dive episode of season 4, episode 1 of For All Mankind. And we hope you stay tuned with us as we're going to kick off a very exciting new series on Monarch: Legacy of Monsters on Apple TV Plus. We are incredibly excited for that. If you haven't caught the hint at our new cover art, designed by Zachary over here with a little help of my own there. Thinking about a combined universe. If we're going to combine all the Apple TV shows, we wanted to show a little bit of Godzilla, a little bit of an astronaut, all in the kind of same landscape. And that's our attempt at creating a dope-ass thumbnail so that we're not banned by Apple once again. All right.
Hope you like it.
You can stay tuned for those. We're going to be dropping those episodes. It kind of throws us off on the schedule because they're both dropping these shows on Friday. But Monarch is dropping 2 episodes next week, I believe. And we will be dropping 2 episodes per week, 1 for each series. And if we see a real appetite, we will take it up to 2 episodes for one of those shows. All right, to Jared, who wrote in, pumped for the new season to start. Listening to the recap episode and just wanted to say that I don't think Ed knows about the affair with Danny yet. There you go, Zach. There's your confirmation.
Thank you, Jared. My bad.
Jared is never wrong here, okay? He said he was about to tell him when they were trapped in the hab, and then the explosion happened and they were rescued. At least they never showed it, and I think it's something they'd show. I think it's something they'd show too.
I think they'd definitely show it.
He did say, I think Danny is solo at the Korean ship because the Korean guy was talking with his wife at one point during the end montage thing. I think you may be wrong about that. I think Danny Stevens may have taken that gun the Korean had and ended his life, if I had to guess.
Yeah.
And then thank you once again for the recommendation from 1996 to 01. It's a great watch. If anybody out there is listening to this podcast and also watching For All Mankind, check it out. It will bring you up to speed. Next email from Maurice. What happened to Danny? Is he just in exile? And he also has some choice words for Karen Baldwin and her particular life choices with the said Danny Stevens. And he seems to be glad, like I am, that she is no longer part of the show. Ed may as well just never come back to Earth. Did Ed ever find out about his wife and Danny? Y'all said he did, but I don't recall. You're right. It did not occur, Maurice. I blame Zach completely. I will take no accountability for his error in judgment there.
All right, I got one thing wrong once. All right. Just crucify me here.
I'm messing with you. Man, it's so hard. Like we're bound to get some things wrong. And honestly, it was such a major event that I think the whole damn season 3 was building up to that moment. And
yeah, I wanted it to happen so badly.
I don't, because what is the benefit for Ed to know that information?
It wasn't anything about a benefit, man. I just wanted to see Ed beat the shit out of Danny.
I agree.
That's what I wanted to see.
I agree. I would have wanted it just for that. But once Karen died, like I wanted it while Karen was alive. But once she died in the explosion,
yeah,
because I wanted that reckoning. I wanted him to be like, Karen, really? Gordo's son, Tracy's son? Something like that. Anyways, but it's kind of better that no one knows, because you know what? You imagine that information and then what it does to Kelly to think about that.
Yeah.
And I think Kelly had a crush on Danny Stevens too back in the day. Anyways.
Probably. I mean, Ed would be way more destroyed than he seems to be now if he did really know about all of that.
Yeah. Maurice is also feeling terrible for Margot, but he believes that she'll bounce back. And I agree too. She'll bounce back, but is she going to bounce back for the wrong side? TBD.
Yeah. I don't know if I feel bad for Margot. I mean, sure, it sucks. You're stuck in Russia. You've been exiled, I guess, from the United States, but you did kind of do something treasonous there, right?
She did, but I have empathy for her in the sense that, I mean, there's a shot in this episode where she's looking at this family playing with their kid, and she probably thinks like, I sacrificed my whole life for my career. You know, she could have had a family, you know, she could have had both, right? Like Aleida's doing. And she sacrificed it for the wrong guy in a way, right?
Yeah.
So anyways, you got any categories for us, or are we wrapping this one up?
Well, let's start. You already touched on the two good lines in the episode. They're what, devils when they're up and angels when they're down.
Yes.
That's the one that sticks in my head at the very least. I thought it was a little funny. But let's go with what's the favorite character of the episode?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Mm-hmm. It's a very good one, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's tough, right? Because I love Ed and I love Danielle, but it might be. I think it's Grigori in this episode.
Yeah, that's what I was picking. Yeah, I loved. I mean, farewell, rest in peace, and all of that. But yeah, no, I loved. It was good. It was a little emotional. Again, the show pulls no punches.
It's a character who has very limited screen time, and yet you care for him so much.
Yeah.
And you hate to see him go. And he's heroic. He has a heroic moment where he says, I'm not taking out this whole ship. He gives Ed the moral release to say, listen, man, like, I have no O2. Even if you come out here, I'm dead anyways. You know?
Yeah.
So it's Grigori. Is that your choice too?
Yeah, that was who I was picking, Grigori. I thought it stuck with me. Like, it just...
Honorable mentions to Miles. I think he makes you care about his character very immediately. I think just very early on into his introduction, you care about him. And then Ed and Danielle, I think, are going to be they're going to win the Tommy Shelby Award for always being loved on every episode. I just think that's the thing, right? So
of course. That is exactly the name of that award that we should give.
The Tommy Shelby Award.
Recurring characters that are just always an MVP.
It's the Tommy Shelby Don Draper Award.
There you go.
Yeah. Any other categories?
Yeah. So favorite scene in the episode.
Ooh. I think it's got to be the scene where everything's going to hell with the asteroid, where it's just like everything's going wrong with the cables. Like, I was on the edge of my seat while I was watching that. The show does have a tendency of doing that to me because, like you mentioned, they don't pull any punches. So you're seeing Ed Baldwin, but I also wouldn't have been surprised if Ed Baldwin died in this episode.
Same.
So it's one of those
I was getting a little nervous.
Yeah, I was like, God damn it.
Don't kill him off.
I was like, if they kill him in this episode, so help me. Don't you do that. Yeah. How about yours?
I think my that one was a great scene. I don't want to pick the same thing on everything. So, you know, the scene that I liked a lot, I liked the introduction to Miles. Like, I mean, as much as I think that he's going to be a screw up, I like the intro to his character. I mean, I do feel for him. He's got, you know, a lot of things not going in his direction. He finally has, you know, for him at the very least, a big win. I just hope that I'm proven wrong later in the show and he doesn't turn out to be a screw up.
Me too.
All right, I got one more. So this is just more of a general question I wanted to ask you.
Cool.
If you were to be an astronaut,
okay,
and you were gonna die in space,
why do I have to die?
Would you want to die being impaled from behind, or by getting your leg pinched and your suit, you know, pierced? Where you're leaking O2. How would you rather go?
Yeesh.
So I got my pick.
The hero's way out is Grigori. I think both died like heroes. Being impaled immediately and dying is probably the preferred choice.
Yeah, that was going to be my preferred choice. Not only because it's quick, but because it was from behind. You didn't see it coming. It's like it hurts like hell for probably, I'm sure, a solid bit there. I don't know how to quantify time, but you know, I think you're gone pretty quickly as well. So
I'm telling
that would be my pick.
That doesn't happen to me because I'm not getting outside that ship to attach these ropes across this football field-sized asteroid. It's just
so you're not a hero then, huh?
I'm not dying in that moment.
Mario is the self preservationist here. Just
No, I'm
sitting
saying,
in the back of the ship.
I'm saying, Ed, how about we try this at round 2? How about we just give us one more attempt? You know,
let's disconnect for now and
this
pull away.
This is the maiden voyage. How expensive are these cables? Like, can we just try this? Can we back up the ship a little bit, reattach, and just try this one more time?
Again, like, I think they should have pulled it. I think that would have made more sense than pushing it. But, you know, I'm not the engineer here.
Well, actually, pushing it probably makes more sense because if you're pulling it, it slams into you and you break.
Well,
right?
You don't break in front of it. You disconnect and then you peel away.
And you keep on going.
Yeah, man. I mean, it can't move any quicker than you. So as long as you don't slow down, you're good.
You know, we need to bring a rocket scientist on the show and ask him about the antics of the things that happened in it and talk about it. But yeah, well, we'll see. If he watches the show, then great. If not, we got to get a different rocket scientist. But
I want to know how they got those heavy ass cables up there in outer space.
Yeah, true. All right. To your outro, Zach.
Well, I got one more thing that I think we could maybe declare. It's not a category, but maybe it's something that we could declare now because we did disagree on
we should do some wagers too.
A wager, yeah, it's a bet.
Okay.
I think the first bet of this season should be that I think Miles is going to be a screw up and basically be Danny 2.0 and mess things up on Mars, and you think that he's not.
That's tough because I do feel like something may occur, but I do think he doesn't end up being a Danny Stevens. Can I say it's not going to be Danny Stevens level, or is that a cop out?
Well, I mean, it's kind of a cop out. I mean, he's definitely not going to be sleeping with Ed Baldwin's wife.
well, never say never. I'm just kidding. No, let's continue. I'll just go the opposite. I'm gonna say Miles will not be a screw up, even though in my heart I feel like what's going to occur, and this could be the second wager we talk about. Something's gonna occur where Ed has to save his ass. Ed dies as a result this season, if I had to guess.
Okay, I'll take you on that one because my feeling is that Ed's not going to die, and I'm solely basing that off of the fact that I feel like this show. Well, he's one of my favorite characters, but I feel like this show. All right, let me start by saying, look, Danielle's a very strong character in the show, and she is really, I think,
the show is Ed
set up to take the lead, right?
Yeah.
But to me, like, this show is about Ed in a similar way how like Mad Men is about Don Draper, right? Like it's nowhere near on the same level as Mad Men. I'm not saying that, but this show, at least for me so far, has so much been about Ed and his life. I mean, yes, there's focuses on his family and his friends, and there's other core characters that come on, the show here, but it's all been about him. So for that reason, I'm going to say, I think Ed lives. But I'll take you on that one. I think that's a good second bet.
If you want to go that route, you definitely can say that there's been only a few characters whose entire families have been important characters, right? And that's Ed's family. So you got Ed, Karen, Kelly, and rest in peace, Shane and Karen. Mm-hmm. Gordo and Tracy Stevens. Everybody in their family member was central. Danielle, I don't even know her husband's name or her son's name. So not essential, but still huge. Molly, kind of in the same boat as Danielle. Ellen, very integral part. We pretty much know everything about Ellen in that sense, even though she's not on the first episode. Margo as well. She's probably a step above Danielle in terms of intimacy and knowing her personal life.
Yeah.
And yeah, you kind of see it from there. I do think it's time for Ed to die. If I had to guess, I just feel like something's going to happen. I hope I'm wrong, by the way. This is a bet that I'm taking, but I hope I'm wrong. Yeah. And I was going to mention one more thing, but I can't remember it. Oh, I remember. Should I watch Altered Carbon?
I liked Altered Carbon. There's only 2 seasons. The first season for me was much better than second season. Second season got a little odd. There's a lot of nudity in it, so just be prepared for that. It's a Netflix show.
Oh, okay. Did it get canceled, or is it?
I'm pretty sure it got canceled. It got axed after season 2, I believe. I liked it. Like season 1 for me was really cool. I mean, it reminds me a lot of like if Cyberpunk were not a video game and it were a TV show. Like I could kind of see, or Cyberpunk, I should say, where like a show, not a game. Like it was interesting. It's like this almost like this investigation, the detective show. Blade Runner, really cool.
So kind of Blade Runner vibes.
Yeah, it was interesting. I would say like watch the first episode because I was in after the first episode. It was a quick one for me to get into. It was kind of up my alley. I wish season 2 was more like season 1 and it didn't get canceled, but I mean, look, it is what it is. You win some, you lose some.
Well, all right. Well, thank you all for tuning in. We're giving you a long episode to celebrate Veterans Day out there. Happy Veterans Day to all of you. Thank you all who have served in the military. We thank you for your service. On behalf of the Story Archive show, myself, Zach, and the entire network, we thank you humbly. Enjoy this weekend. Enjoy this episode. Enjoy this first episode of For All Mankind. And make sure to tune in to Monarch Legacy of Monsters, our premiere coverage on that series next week. To you, Zach.
Well, thank you for listening to this episode of For All Mankind by Story Archives. You can find this podcast anywhere you find podcasts, Apple and Spotify podcasts primarily. You can visit us on YouTube at Soapbox Podcast Network. Our website is soapbox.house. You can email us at contact@soapbox.house. And we do have a link in the description below to sign up for our quarterly newsletter. So we hope to see you there.
Until next time, peace.